Dipper isn't canonically trans. Or is he? Most people you'll meet say it's just a headcanon, something that some fans personally believe about the character. It isn't actually truly, factually accurate. But the more I looked into it, the deeper this Dipper dive took me. There are many people who genuinely believe that this might be more than just a headcanon, and they have supposed evidence to back it up. I want to take a look at this whole conversation, why Trans Dipper is so popular, why it's relatable to so many people, and the wild world of misinformation, fabricated quotes, and amateur genetic analysis surrounding it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking for the mailman.
Oh, what? Are you saying I'm not a male man? Is that what you're trying to say? I'm not male? I'm not a man? Is that what you're getting at?
Are you crying?
Out of the entire cast of Gravity Falls, Dipper is really the only one that receives this level of trans headcanon treatment. And that's not for no reason either. Dipper's character is full of things that parallel common trans experiences. For example, throughout the show's runtime, Dipper is very insecure about his own masculinity. He's embarrassed by both his lack of manliness and his possession of some femininity. This is very apparent in the episode Dipper vs. Manliness, where Dipper is challenged to become a real man and his insecurities are at an all-time high. This episode, being so early into the show, was probably the first seed that planted the idea of Dipper being trans in some people's heads. Simply put, it's just a very relatable episode to trans people. It also might be worth mentioning that the situation around Dipper revealing his birth name Mason to Ford in the Journal 3 can also read a lot like a trans experience. Mason, he blurted out. He seemed shocked by what had come out of his mouth, and then deliberately repeated it. My real name is Mason. Dipper's just a nickname, but everyone got used to it and now it feels too late to tell everyone the truth, and it's kind of a dumb name anyway. Don't tell anyone. Your secret's safe with me, Mason, I said, and I think it's a great name. The Masons are a great secret society, you know.
You! Gonna finish that?
No.
Funnily enough, there's actually two different major interpretations of Dipper's behavior that trans Dipper truthers preach, and generally I found that they somehow exist conflictless and independently of each other. There is a whole sector of people who relate to Dipper as a trans man or trans mask, constantly trying to prove his manliness, wanting to avoid being perceived as feminine, especially in the case of him being sensitive about the name Mason. That Journal 3 segment can definitely read as Dipper coming out to Ford, one of the adults he trusts most, and affirming his real chosen name of Mason. And the other group relates to Dipper as a trans woman or trans femme, someone who's trying to perform masculinity to fit in, not yet out of the closet, wanting masculinity because it's been what he told he wants, despite his femininity, and using the nickname Dipper throughout his life instead of his birth name Mason because he's more comfortable with it. To be clear, neither of these are what Alex Hirsch had in mind when he created the character. Dipper and Mabel are a hop and a skip away from Hirsch and his sister, and really all of this Dipper stuff was intended to be a metaphor for the insecurities, uncertainties, and complexities of puberty and going from boy to man. It just also happened to fit multiple trans experiences really well too. Hey, I mean, I guess Alex Hirsch was even a better writer than he knew. And that's all brilliant, a character in a show that many trans individuals can see themselves as and relate to. And it produces some banger fan works, but that only explains why people would headcanon Dipper as trans. Why do some people legitimately believe that Dipper was created with the intention of being a trans character? Well, if you do research on the topic, one image you find popping up again and again is this one, a preview of a Google search result stating that Alex Hirsch confirmed Dipper to be transcoded. You'll see this image passed around a lot. The issue with this image is, though, that it doesn't show a source. At first, I took the educated assumption that it was a preview of a CBR article. Those of us who have been around in the fandom for a minute now know the controversial things certain Gravity Falls CBR articles have said. For example, in the article Gravity Falls Trans Grenda Grendinator is Canon by Micah Yip, the following is stated. There are multiple factors evidenced throughout the show that prove Grenda is trans, the most notable being her deep voice. In Season 1, Episode 7, it is revealed that Grenda's voice was not always this deep, but had changed when she hit puberty. The change in her voice is most likely because she was assigned male at birth, and hasn't yet taken hormones. There's also the matter of Grenda's physicality. She's a bit taller than her cisgender counterparts, which is another characteristic that can be attributed to the she was assigned at birth. Grenda is also committed to presenting and dressing as high femme as possible, which is something that many trans women feel pressured by society to do in order to pass. And while CBR has never, at least to my knowledge, straight up lied about someone saying something, as you saw right there, they can be very misleading. And so my hunt led me to this article. Gravity Falls, Dipper and Wendy were both queer-coded by E.L. Meseros, Katie Dahl, Kieran Lowlin, Robbie Robinson, and Andrea Sandoval. This article touches on Wendy's bisexuality and the possibility of Dipper being transgender. And if you didn't know, the Wendy thing is actually more or less true. It depends on how you want to interpret this X, formerly Twitter thread. Though again, when we get to the trans stuff, CBR CBR kind of drops the ball here, but we'll circle back to this later. What's important to know now is that this article does not contain this segment in the search preview. After a bit more research though, I was able to find this post on the Gravity Falls wiki from the user The Java Void. And finally, there it was, the origin of the Google search preview. The words lined up exactly. This right here is the source for the majority of the conversation, whether people were citing this post directly or the search screenshot. But now the question is, where did the Java Void get this information? Well, luckily, I was just able to ask them myself. Through their wiki bio, I found that they were still very active on Tumblr, so I shot them a message. You should follow me over there on Tumblr, by the way. And they ended up getting back to me, a complete stranger, super quickly, and they were super nice. But unfortunately, for anyone hoping that this factoid was real, the Java Void confirmed it to be false, explaining that they had been misinformed. Yes, there was no source on it originally, so many people had discounted it already, but now we know for sure that it's false because we tracked down each source to its cause. And if that doesn't deserve a like, I don't know what does. However, there's another side of this conversation I've neglected to cover so far. The people who believe that Dipper is trans for scientific reasons, like they're trying to back up their claims with genealogy.
We'll scan your mind, bioelectrically encrypting your thoughts so Bill can't read them. Now, say hello to your thoughts.
If you weren't aware, in real life, when they're born, identical twins are always, except for some very rare cases, the same. This would directly imply that if Dipper and Mabel are identical twins, then they were both male or female at birth. Let's circle back to that previous CBR article I partially skipped over. Dipper and his sister Mabel appeared to be identical twins. If that were the case, it backs up the theory that the two were assigned the same gender at birth. However, this evidence is thin in comparison to other hints throughout Gravity Falls that Dipper was transmasculine. Look at the Pines twins, clearly they're identical. And if one of them has to be trans, clearly it's Dipper. Mabel never struggles with being feminine, she's clearly not trans. Dipper is the one struggling with being masculine, so he must be a trans man. And the science points to it. Pause. Have you ever accidentally been so pro-trans that you end up being transphobic? That's where certain people in this argument may have accidentally found themselves in. But who am I? I'm Sold McClure. You may recognize me from such unreleased videos as and these people have found themselves in a situation where, despite intending to argue for trans representation, they instead ended up insulting trans individuals. Let's look back on that article proving Grenda was trans. As evidence for their argument, they use her height, voice, and dressing style all as proof. Their proof is the failure of girlhood. They must separate her from real woman to prove that she is a trans woman. This parallels common transphobia even more when you bring in genetics and biology to prove your point. Same thing applies to Dipper. There is nothing wrong with headcanons, but there's a strong difference between I relate to this character because of their relationship with masculinity, and this character must be trans because of their relationship with masculinity. The latter can quickly dilute into he's failing at being a man, therefore he must be a trans man, and warp into some type of screwed up reverse transvestigation. Ironically, it misses the point of the thing that inspired this all, the Manitor episode, Dipper versus manliness, the moral being that there was no right way to be a man. And doubly ironic, Dipper and Mabel probably aren't even identical twins. They're probably just fraternal, similarly to their inspirations of Alex and Ariel Hirsch. It also might be worth mentioning that Alex Hirsch has made multiple statements saying that he doesn't condemn headcanons. That, combined with the fact that he's been open about Disney's censorship of queerness as pointed out by Dexerto, could have also led to rumors circulating about Hirsch's true intentions with Dipper's character. The concept of trans Dipper in and of itself is great. It produces awesome fanworks, uplifts the trans community, and can provide for some representation to some people. But just be careful trying to prove that fact. It can put down the very community it was intended to help. We do have a Discord server where you can discuss all the same stuff. Subscribe and I'll catch you all in the next one.